guys, how you doing? Hello. It is super nice to see all of you here. Today we're going to be doing a different kind of ASMR I haven't done yet. And that is simply rambling and talking your ears off. Because I feel like it's good to just be talked to sometimes. And just let your brain process. Just have your brain process everything that's being said. And I might throw in some good ASMR triggers in there as well. So, let's get to talking. A little things about me going on is that I recently moved from Utah to Oklahoma in less than 3 months ago. I moved, and it has been quite an adjustment for me. I have been starting to get a lot more shy, and I've been starting to get a lot more, homesick a little bit, just a little bit, mainly because I lived in Utah for about 15-ish years, and during that time I started to really get to know the area and the people and the culture and the valley and whatnot, and I miss it, and I really do miss it, and I miss being able to, go to my local buildings that I know, go into, my old workplaces in Utah. I miss all those. And I really miss all my Utah friends, and they've all been keeping in contact with me and basically being like, oh, we're always going to be here for you. You can always text us, and you can always, call us. I love all my Utah friends. They're always so supportive and happy. I remember when I first told my Utah friends about me making ASMR, and they all had a little mixed reactions, which was kind of odd, but honestly understandable, because who else would believe them if their friend made ASMR? I remember I told one of my friends, and one of their reactions was, oh, you know what? If it makes you happy, you do you. And that had to be one of my bestest friends, because we've been friends for about 4 or 3 years. And we went into high school together, and we would always chat, and we would always hang out. And don't get me wrong, I really do miss all my Utah friends. They've always been supportive and happy for me, and I'm always supportive and happy of them. I'm celebrating their achievements with them. I'm doing all that, and hopefully one day I can always go back and see them again and just see their bright faces next time they see me in person, because it's always going to be an amazing time with them, because they've always been amazing to me, and there's no way I can pay back their time that they spent with me and their friendship that they've offered out to me. And there have always been some really funny moments about what we've done, and I kind of want to talk about that, really funny moments. There was one time we were playing, I believe it was Truth or Dare, and it was me and 2 more of my friends, and we were all hanging out. I think we were having a sleepover after we went downtown, Salt Lake City, and we were just hanging out, and we ended up getting some McDonald's. And then we ended up heading back to one of my other friends' house. I obviously called my folks and asked if it was alright, and they said it was okay. And my friend's mom said it was alright if I spend the night. So we were kind of chill. We were playing Truth or Dare, and my friend picked Dare, and it was the kind of game where you and another person basically have to come up with the dare. And what we ended up coming up is that there was going to be writing on the side of my friend's shoe. The white part of your shoe, we were going to take a pen and write whatever we wanted on it. And as we were like writing, I was really trying to like brainstorm what I was trying to do. So I ended up writing my whole channel on the side of his shoe. And I can call him and it would still be there. So now I have advertisements, or a advertisement of my channel on the side of his shoe. And that's still funny to think about, knowing how I'm not even remotely near him anymore, and yet he's still advertising my channel. So if you ever see my channel on the side of someone's shoe, you'll know it's me. You'll know who it is. And another funny friend story that kind of reminds me of all this is when I was celebrating my friend's 17th birthday with them. We ended up going to a park, and it was me, my friend, and my friend also invited like 5 other people. And what we ended up doing was we had this very big like park plot of land that's just grass and some hills. And what we ended up doing is playing a game. And for context, I brought my 2 walkie-talkies, and we would have a monster and we would have the survivors. And what the survivors would have to do is they would all have to stay together, and one person, they would have to share the radio between all survivors, and the monster got their own. And they would basically just have to avoid the monster at all costs. And keep in mind, we played this for a good like 4 hours ish, and it got to the point where the sun was setting and the night sky was starting to come out and all the stars were starting to like glimmer. So it got really scary by that time because it was darker to see, and you couldn't exactly know where the monster was like you could in the daytime, because you were able to see in the daytime. And we ended up just playing there for a few hours, and I think we ended up stopping, I want to say, at about like 1 something a.m. And that was when we ended up going back to my friend's place, and we hung out a little there, and then I got picked up. That was another fun story that I like to tell people because it kind of gives me like good game ideas, because I've noticed how a lot of like younger kids don't play outside as much, and that kind of makes me upset. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember the days where we would always go outside and we would play outside, and when it was time to come in, we would always be sad it was time to come in, seeing all the like other kids play. And it was probably like dinner time. You probably got called in during like dinner time, or you had a curfew. You could have been one of those people with curfews. And they would all be out like at the park or playing soccer or something, and you'd be sad you couldn't go out. Those are the days I kind of miss, because those are the days where I can actually get out and be active more often than now, which I'm going to be more active now. But it was more the fact of like being outside, being younger, having more energy, being less busy all the time, and kicking around a ball and playing with friends from like the school recess and whatnot. It was always such a good time, and I would always come in and I would have to like sneak a cup of water before my parents told me to stay in because it's getting late. I would always like hate getting that, and I would always have to like sneak in, like grab water. I'm kind of ranting about like childhood. Tell me if you like relate to any of these. But I remember one time it was me, my brother, and 2 other friends, and we had all like Nerf guns and stuff, and we had like an entire like block to play this on. And what we would do is we would get like Nerf guns, and we would, run around the block, and we would have to like find each other. We'd probably be like hiding like up in trees or like anywhere like that. We would like try to hide, and we would try to have to like shoot each other with Nerf darts. And the cool thing was we could wear anything on our person during the game, and that would give us like special stats. Like that would give us, like extra health or extra defense or like an extra shot if we miss. There was one time we played so long it got late where it got dark, and I had to like have my phone flashlight out and it kind of brought me into a sense of like I have to be careful with how I use my flashlight, because then I can be seen, but I also need to see. And it kind of trained my eyes to be better to see during nighttime. And it was a very fun game I used to play with all the neighborhood kids. And there was a lot of kids who would actually go back to my school's recess plot of land to like play and do like sports and all that. And it would almost be like sunset, and you would see these kids still like coming back and playing a little bit because they had like a soccer net or something like that. My school had like a bunch of like basketball hoops. Like, you, if I had to count or if I could remember, my old elementary had like 2, 4, 6, I want to say like a good like 8 to like 12 basketball hoops. And we would always like play basketball that way. Another thing we used to play is like Foursquare. Does anyone remember Foursquare? You would sit in like, there'd be like four boxes, and you would like throw like a dodgeball around, and if it like bounced in your square and like bounced out, we would like, you would be out and you had to like restart or like start from the back of the line. Does anyone remember that? That would be like so nice to play. I remember there would always be like some like cheaters to be like, no, it hit the line, it hit the line, it hit the line. And I would always like work my way up to like right before the biggest part or the bigger part of the hierarchy. I would get eliminated, and I'd be like, why? Why would you do this to me? Why would you do this? I moved all around Utah by the time that I lived there. I've lived there for most of my life, so I moved a lot. I remember I used to live in this one neighborhood that was like starting to be developed, and you could like go down the road, you would probably find like a Macy's, or you could probably find, if you live in Utah, you could find like an Arctic Circle, or you can like find all that stuff. I miss living in those places because those usually had pretty fun stuff to do. I remember my neighborhood specifically had like a really big like pit that you could play in. I remember they had like a bunch of like land and like hills, like people would like roll down. Do you ever like lay down flat on your back and you would like roll down the hill and stuff like that? Has that ever happened to you guys? Do you guys ever remember doing that? Those are always pretty fun to do. And sometimes I just think about those moments, and sometimes I wish I could go back where, you know, I didn't wish I could grow up so fast. I could have, you know, taken my time on growing friendships and whatnot. But I know I'm gonna probably, you know, make a lot of friends in the medical field, which is another thing. If for you guys don't know, I am an emergency medical responder, certified at the time of this recording, obviously. It was pretty fun going through like all the classes and whatnot. The classes for this like emergency medical responder certification was definitely insane, and it was actually pretty cool and fun. Of course, it can be like stressful, you know, from the nature of it, but it was still pretty fun. I remember one time it was like our final, so this was like the very end of the class. You know, we had all our tests and stuff we had to get done. Keep in mind, this was concurrent enrollment, and I actually did it through another college, so I technically have college credit I need to use. They did so well with the with like setting up the tests and whatnot, especially like the hands-on final. It was insane. All I remember was walking in, grabbing my bag that had like my stethoscope, blood pressure cuff, and like my shock blanket and my CPR mask, kind of all that. Oh, excuse me. I would basically grab that, and our teacher would be like, okay, like this is the end, this is like the biggest test ever, like you did all your written tests. I passed my written test, of course. I'm so proud of myself. What they did is they made it kind of like into a scenario, and the scenario, it was like a it was like a Brazilian car race bleacher collapse. That was like our scenario. And what we did is we had a number, and the number is to a patient on stage. They had like a little card with the number on it, and it would be like, this is their respirations, like, no, this is their blood pressure, this is all that. And I have to give it to like the stage crew. I don't think we give enough like credit to like stage crew or like tech crew who like works like lights on stages and whatnot. They did a phenomenal job on this. They had like flashing like red and blue lights like on the stage, and they had like really loud sirens playing, and it just made the experience more surreal, and it made it more realistic, which kind of made us like work really really hard for this. Another cool thing that they did was they took the bleachers that students from choir would stand on when they would sing on stage, and they like tipped it over, and they added like a fog machine that would like play, and it would like hang low to the ground. It was awesome. As much as like it was trying to depict like something like really tragic, like in a way, like the setup was beautiful, and I have to appreciate that. I had patient 14 when I got there. I don't know how much I can exactly say, but she had like a rebar to the chest, and she had like bleeding on her like arms and legs, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so cool and like so surreal. So I asked her, I did my scene safety, my gloves, and I did all that. She was pretty responsive, even though she was like screaming from the pain that her role would be in, and she did really good acting. Like if I knew like I wasn't in class, like I would genuinely think like something was actually wrong, like if it wasn't makeup. Like she did super well. And I did immediately I did a certain maneuver with bandage that would basically keep an object in place. I did a bulk dressing, and with that I just kind of kept it still because I didn't want to exactly move it. Another thing that I did is I packed the wounds on the legs and arms, and I considered C-spine, of course, so I didn't try to move her neck or back anywhere, because I think that's a little more than enough proof to tell me not to try to move her if. So I got her all situated. I checked her oxygen saturation and her blood pressure, and everything somewhat came up normal. However, her blood pressure, I'm pretty sure, was pretty low. So I just had to keep a close eye on that. After I was finished with my first patient, my instructor came over and he was like, hey, this person didn't have anyone today, so can you go over and can you like examine them and check them out? And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So I like went over, and this person had like just a basic like pain in their leg, and as a first responder, is what I'm taught is if there's like pain that's above like a 6 or up, then we would have to consider it a precaution and be like, we don't know if it's broken, but we kind of have to consider it as a broken limb. So we would just immediately splint it because we wouldn't want to risk doing more damage than done. So that was pretty fun. I also had to help a person who had a pretty big gash to their leg. I tried to help them, and this one student who was like trying to help this person, like I could tell she was stressing, and my instructor wanted me to go over there to help her. So I go over, and I can tell she's like kind of panicking, and I said, hey, like what's going on? She said, I don't know, I just need to get my head straight, like I'm so stressed. And through all the noise and through all like the smog, I looked at her and I said, look, you will do amazing. You just need a little help. That's all. That's not a bad thing. And I basically said, okay, I'm going to need some gauze, and I'm going to need a tourniquet, and I'm going to need a SAM splint to splint the leg. Can you go get those for me? And she went to go get them, and I basically just held pressure onto the wound. I just want to add pressure to see if I can stop the bleeding as much as I can with my gloves. And I'm holding pressure, and the person's like, ow. And I'm like, I know it hurts. Like, it really does hurt. I have to give like this guy credit. He did persuade into the character. And that moment, it kind of made me think of like, wow, the acting between these two students is phenomenal because one, you have a person who's in really critical condition who's acting the part phenomenally, and you have another patient over here who's just mildly but still injured. But he's able to play the role quite well, and that's something I do have to give um, kudos to like all theater kids because I'm pretty sure these were all just theater 4 kids, like theater honors students who got to play these. And I was actually quite a theater kid when I was in middle school. Um, so after like everything, they basically came in with donuts and some chocolate milk, and we all just kind of had like a little party and whatnot. I got a cool little picture of me just off the stage, and that was pretty nice. But talking about stages, there was a time before I did this, I did ASMR. I was actually a theater kid, and I genuinely loved being a theater kid. Being a theater kid was honestly amazing. It was fun, even though it got really stressful and hectic, especially with like all the props and whatnot. I would say 10 out of 10, like you should definitely become like somewhat into theater and you should definitely try it out. I genuinely think you should try out having some kind of theater experience or acting on stage at least because it can really open up your eyes. Like if you're shy, like being a theater kid or acting on stage could genuinely help you with that shyness, which I've genuinely felt it helped me with because I was pretty shy in high school. Um, but there was a few musicals I was in. I was in Matilda, I was in Oliver, and Anastasia, and I was actually in Finding Nemo. And Finding Nemo actually was quite a funny one because it was like not a school production. It was actually another theater that was pretty up and high end, and I do thank them for the opportunity that they gave me and the experience. It was awesome. I actually have some pictures of me somewhere in my Matilda costume. I look pretty good. Um, in Matilda, I just played like a school kid. I didn't play like a really big role. In Oliver, I played policeman, and that was pretty cool. I got a few speaking lines, and I got to be on the very finale, like on a bridge, which was pretty cool. Finding Nemo, which actually had to be my biggest role, was a parent. I believe I was Tad's parent from Finding Nemo, and I'm pretty sure that is the seahorse. Seahorse was probably Tad. Probably. Um, that was pretty cool to play. And the stage I did Finding Nemo had like a spinning stage, and it would like rotate. And not only that, like there was a pit that could open up. Like it could take, think of like center stage. Like that was a big opening that could actually sink into the floor, and it could go pretty deep into the floor. And all I knew was we had that, and once it like reached a certain depth going down, there was actually a light that appeared just just on the inside of the curtain that would like point where all the actors inside backstage could see, and it would be like caution, like pit open, and that's basically your cue of there's like a hole in the floor that you could fall through. And I personally thought I'm gonna fall through if I'm not careful. Like I genuinely had a fear that like during like performance I'm gonna like have to like walk out and I'm gonna miss my step and I'm gonna fall straight through and I'm gonna like fall into the pit. And that scared me for most of the time. And there was a hot moment where my directors and everyone up there was like, you know what, let's maybe not make a pit that could cause, someone to get hurt, because that wouldn't be pretty nice to have like a week before opening night. So we ended up scrapping having a pit for a lot more scenes. There was only one scene that had a pit, that had to have a pit in it in order to make sense for the story, and that was when Nemo like swims to the boat and like touches it. That was like the only thing that we had to have the pit for. But also like we did Go With the Flow, which is like a turtle song. swimming the EAC. That was pretty cool. We got like a cool new outfit. We got like a whole new like wardrobe for that. That was really nice. The songs were amazing. Oh, I cannot tell you how much I love Finding Nemo. You cannot pay me any money to like not be in that. Like if I had the option back then to like join it, I would say yes in an absolute heartbeat. And it was for a pretty high up theater as well in Utah. Um the stage, the lights and the house were really nice. The like the sounds and the lightings that the text did to like make the scene looks more like surreal, like the colors and everything, they did a really good job. And one day, I believe this was like fifth performance, we were all sitting in the green room and we were all just kind of vibing, and one of the students who played Bruce um, basically got on the piano and started to play. So we all started to like sing, and it got to a point where this kid found like the sheet music from the musical to a piano, like the piano scores, and we were all just in there singing all the songs. Like we were all like practicing slash vibing. We were all going out. We were going ham. We know we were all stretching our vocal cords and getting ready. And one of the directors walks in, and she walks in. She looks at all of us and is like, "What are y'all doing?" And then the person on the piano was like, "Oh, we're just practicing," and we all just started singing together, including the director. Like it was one of those like wholesome moments that you can't forget of for quite a while because of how much like it means to like you and everyone around you. And I'm not gonna lie, kids and the actors on the final day, like we were all like super sad, like we were all like crying at the end of the show. We all went down into like the green room, and the directors basically pulled out shirts with the musical on them, and they had like our name on them and stuff like that. And like people were crying, and I will admit I was crying a little bit too because I've had made a few friends at that point, and being like, you live all the way up northern Utah, or you live more southern, and you would have to see all your friends like go far distances that you couldn't reach. Like it really hurts. I really miss them. I wish I could see them again. There was one other time we were in school again, and we were all doing kickball, and we were all like in line, and they were kicking. I was outfield at this point, and there was this one kid, I forgot his name, but he was kind of like, like I'm gonna like show off, like I'm gonna like do something really cool. This kid kicks a ball so hard it flies up into the roof, and it hits those like hanging lights, and like two chains snap off from like the part holding up the light, and it starts swinging back and forth really violently, and the whole game had to be paused, and I'm pretty sure the gym had to kind of be evacuated just in case like the other two chains snapped, so like it doesn't come crashing down on anyone. And we basically had to pause the whole game, and we ended up just sitting there for a good like 45 minutes doing whatever we wanted while staff members came up to like fix the lights. Gym class was definitely a crazy part of school for almost everyone. Does anyone remember those like scooters like you would like sit and you would like wheel around on? We did something pretty fun for my final credit of PE. Our coach basically set up cones, and we were separated into like teams of 4, and we would basically have 2 scooters, and we'd have to like ride out across the gym however we wanted on the scooters. We'd have to like go around the cone and come back. We did some like really clever ones. There was a person who grabbed both handles of the scooter, and another person grabbed their ankles and basically like lifted them into the air, and like they would like run across and like try to like loop around as fast as they can. Another fun thing was when we would just be like sitting on it, and someone would push us from our backs because it would be like so hard to like steer. And we ended up doing like a race against the whole class, and we'd have to like do like a whole like few laps around the gym. We ended up coming in first place. My team, we ended up coming in first place because what we ended up doing was I was a pusher, and I basically just like angled my body in such a way that had like complete contact with the floor. And I like sprung off the polished wood, and I went so fast to the point where I could like feel like the ache in my legs and my arms like getting like worse and worse because of how hard I'm like exerting my energy. And when we got to the end, like I was like so tired I like collapsed onto the floor, and I was like, I did it. I'm alive. I beat it. We ended up just getting like a king size candy bar. And hey, I won't lie, like after all that hard work that we've put into that class, I feel like it was a pretty good deal. And this kind of makes me move on to my final point is American Sign Language. And this has been kind of like a little hidden hobby of mine that I've had for a little bit, and that is ASL. I currently am not enrolled in any kind of ASL program. However, I was for about 4 months ago. I was. I miss it so much. There was a teacher there who could sign, and I don't even know where to start with, talking about how much love I have for the deaf community. I feel like the number one thing that brought me into the deaf community is seeing some deaf students back in middle school, how they used to sign language, and that made me want to take sign language. So the next year I signed up for ASL 1 and I took it, and that was your basic like ABCs, numbers, how are yous, that kind of stuff that will introduce you to someone. I took it again in high school, and this time we went over like time. We went over like how to sign certain hobbies or dates or places or other things that you would have to know in order to get your idea across through ASL. My favorite ever experience I've had with the deaf community is when my high school implemented what's called a DCE in my ASL class, and it stands for Deaf Community Involvement, and that basically is my project for the entire quarter. And what that would do is I would have to basically answer a question. Let's say, how does the deaf community find it hard to communicate day-to-day objects or problems without having to use, your voice to communicate? And my teacher would basically give me a list of things that I can do, and that would either be like go to the deaf center or watch a movie with earplugs and the volume off or all that. And we would do it. We would get a picture for proof, and then we would had to write like a paper. I usually liked writing this paper because of how much it made me feel good on the inside. But my favorite experience was when I did go down to the deaf center, and the deaf center was, ooh, I loved it. I loved it so much. It was so fun. The deaf center usually holds like game nights, and that would be like ASL deaf games and like practices for students who are studying American Sign Language. I personally went because one, it sounded really fun to do through my DCE, and two, I kind of felt like it would give me a good introduction to really signing with deaf people. And I went there, and we ended up playing a really fun game. And if you guys don't know ASL, I really encourage you to learn a little bit, just enough to, just to say hi or hello or how are you, because I feel like that should have been taught a little bit more in high school or any school. How the game would work is we would have the deaf leader. She would basically sign a word to us. There would be two people having teams, and they're all standing in a line, and there would be a whiteboard in between them, and the lady would basically finger spell a word, and then the people with the markers would have to like run over to the board and like cross out the correct word that she finger spelled. It was pretty fun. It was like high intense. I met people who were completely deaf and who uses ASL as their native language, and I've also met people who were like, I have no idea like the ABCs, or I have no idea what this is. And it gives me an insight about how people who don't even know anything to people who want to make friends like come together, and it's beautiful to see just a gathering of these people who have differences like inability to hear or hard of hearing or can hear. It is an amazing feeling to be in such a community where like it doesn't matter if I'm hearing or deaf or no ASL or not no ASL, but they will accept me and they'll, show me and they'll like teach me ASL. It's awesome. It really is. And the deaf center was definitely and like something to see, because in every room, no, scratch that, almost in like every hall or every room there is like something, whether it's like a picture or anything like that, that's a piece of American deaf history, where it would basically go through like moments in deaf history that changed, or really major events like the first deaf school, or Abbey de la Paix, or anything like that. They would always teach all these different like historical figures who helped shape American Sign Language for what it is today. And it really fascinates me, and it makes me have hope knowing that we were able to create a language that's nonverbal, that is can be used for not only like deaf people but mute people. Sometimes people who are mute can sign in ASL. It also opens my eyes to like other history that I have learned that can be implemented into American Sign Language in the deaf community. Like in my ASL class, we learned how Morse code was also given into and played a part in like the deaf community, and also how like debit cards also used, because sometimes deaf people can't exactly hear like how much they need to give, so they would give like their debit card and that would like come off of it, you know what I mean? But yeah, learning these like it's in bits of pieces of history every now and then, like it really encourages me and it enlightens me to keep on going no matter how hard it gets. And I feel like that's something that we all like need to have, is like this integrity to keep going whenever it's hard, or whenever it feels like it's gonna not be worth it in the end. There's always something waiting for you at the end of that finish line. And my personal goal that I want to reach at the end of this year is I wouldn't exactly say fluent, but I want to know enough ASL to where I can have a decent conversation with someone, or where I can, talk to a deaf person and I'll be able to like understand, and I'll be able to like comprehend most of their signs and figure out the main reason behind the like the whole conversation, like be able to like translate, I guess. I'm currently to the point where I can have a decent vocabulary. Like I can sign like, do you want milk, orange juice, how are you, this your friend's name is what, I like this movie, that kind of deal. Like I can sign a pretty basic amount of words to the point where I can call myself like somewhat intermediate of ASL. And I want to make ASL like my second nature and my second language. And ever since I moved to Oklahoma, I kind of lay in my bed sometimes and I think, wow, like I miss my ASL class. Like I miss my learning like environment that I put myself in, and I really miss having that. And hopefully someday I can go back to that deaf center and I can participate in more activities, and sometimes I can go back and I can actually like talk to more deaf people that I have met, and I can make more friends outside of the ability of hearing. I want to make a lot of deaf friends. I want to talk to these people because deaf people are quite interesting. Deaf people are just as people as hearing people are. They have feelings. They, they have stories that they want to tell you. They have experiences that they want to share, and they want to like tell other people, but it's hard to because of how much, like, in a way isolated from the world because of like how many hearing people there are compared to deaf people. But it means the absolute world to me, and probably to deaf people, knowing that hearing people are learning ASL to communicate with deaf people, because they want to talk to you. They want to get to know you. They want to make friends just as much as any other kid or hearing person wants to make friends. And I have had, honestly, like one deaf friend, and I was able to communicate a little bit with him. Some of it was through signing, but he knew from my ability, because I was really bad at signing back then. He knew I was a beginner, so he didn't exactly, like understand most of what I was signing, so we would usually just write pen on paper. But overall, the deaf community, I love it to bits and pieces. I miss it so much. I would love to go back and, learn all there is to learn about deaf history, and I'm currently still doing my own research, and I would love to see more hearing people learn ASL, and hopefully one day I'll be able to meet some more deaf friends, and maybe I'll be able to, brighten up their day a lot. I want to be able to make people smile, and I want to make people happy regardless of their situation. And who knows, maybe something like that will come across. But yeah, that was my rambling. Sorry if it didn't make exactly a lot of sense, but yeah, I just wanted to come in here and just rant for you, and hopefully by this time you are slightly passed out. But if not, I'm glad, and I hope you enjoyed my rambling. I will see you guys in the next video. You have a good night, alright?